So in this video, I would like to explain possessive pronouns in Russian. Possessive pronouns in Russian indicate to whom something belongs, and in English, they're expressed as my, your, his, her, its, our, and their. There's also the informal y'alls, which is not really used, but I'm still including it because Russian has it. One of the most important things to realize about possessive pronouns is that they change based on gender, case, and plurality. The 6 Russian cases affect each pronoun individually, meaning that each word under every case will have its own pattern to follow. Throughout the video, I'll give many examples and explain how each modification can be used in context, so many words need to be known and understood. First, I'll show the basic principle by presenting the dictionary form of the pronouns, then presenting them in each case, and then presenting them in every gender. First, we have the masculine gender under the singular nominative case, and the following pronouns will look like this. Moi is my, tvoi is your, yevo is his, yeyo is her, nash is our, vash is y'all's, and ich is their. Now, before moving on to the rest of the cases, there are a few important things you should know. First, the pronouns yevo, yeyo, and ich are not affected by the 6 Russian cases. Therefore, they will not get modified under any case or any gender, even if they're plural. In spoken Russian, however, ich can sometimes be modified, but formally it is not used that much, so we don't have to worry about that. Second, the pronoun yevo is written with a g, but it's pronounced with a v, because it's an old spelling rule. And also, it can act like the pronoun its. Third, because the pronouns moi, tvoi, nash, and vash are the only ones that will change, I'll continue to relate to them using this chart that will change and get bigger as every case is presented. Even though their order is slightly off, doing it this way will be simpler and faster. So now, let's continue with the masculine singular in every other case. This is how the pronouns will look under every case in the masculine singular. In the genitive, the masculine singular pronouns are moyevo, tvoyevo, nashevo, and vashevo. There is no point in covering yevo, yeyo, and ich because again, they do not change at all. In the dative, the masculine singular pronouns are moyemu, tvoyemu, nashemu, and vashemu. In the accusative, if an object is inanimate, the masculine singular pronouns borrow the pattern from the nominative, and if an object is animate, the pronouns borrow the pattern from the genitive. In the instrumental, the masculine singular pronouns are maim, tvaim, nashim, and vashim. In the prepositional, the masculine singular pronouns are mayom, tvoyom, nashem, and vashim. Now that the masculine is over, we can go to the feminine singular. This is how the pronouns will look like under every case in the feminine singular. In the nominative, the feminine singular pronouns are moya, tvoya, nasha, and vasha. In the genitive, the feminine singular pronouns are moyei, tvoyei, nashei, and vashei. In the dative, instrumental, and prepositional, the feminine singular pronouns are literally all borrowed from the genitive. In the accusative, regardless if an object is animate or inanimate, the feminine singular pronouns will be the same. Moyu, tvoyu, nashu, and vashu. Now that the feminine is over, we can go to the neuter singular. This is how the pronouns will look like under every case in the neuter singular. In the nominative, the neuter singular pronouns are moyo, tvoyo, nashe, and vashe. In the genitive, dative, instrumental, and prepositional, the pronouns literally copy the same pattern as in the masculine singular. The only difference is in the accusative. Regardless if an object is animate or inanimate, the pattern is the same as in the nominative neuter singular. Finally, we can go to the plural, which affects all of these pronouns, regardless of gender. This is how the pronouns will look like under every case in the plural, which relates to any gender. In the nominative, the pronouns are moi, tvoi, nashi, and vashi. In the genitive, the pronouns are moich, tvoich, nashich, and vashich. In the dative, the pronouns are moyim, tvoim, nashim, and vashim. In the accusative, if an object is inanimate, the pronouns borrow the pattern from the nominative, and if an object is animate, the pronouns borrow the pattern from the genitive. In the instrumental, the pronouns are моими, твоими, нашими, and вашими. In the prepositional, the pronouns borrow the pattern from the genitive. Conclusively, this is how possessive pronouns look like in Russian. Now, at first glance, it looks like a lot of words that need to be remembered, but actually, the pattern across every pronoun is very simple. When we look at every pronoun, each case has the same prefix, just with different endings. For instance, the plural genitive literally has the same prefix as the masculine genitive, just with the ending ich, and the same idea applies to basically any other pronoun. As a matter of fact, 60% of the pronouns, if not more, are simply borrowed from other cases, so it's really not that hard to remember. However, knowing when to use these pronouns can be difficult, which is why I'm going to present examples of each pronoun under every case. Let's start with the masculine singular in the nominative, which is the dictionary form of nouns, and go through every case. Мой дом, твой дом, его дом, ее дом, наш дом, ваш дом, and их дом. In this case, we use the nominative singular masculine and the noun dom, house. These phrases are simple, and so this is how every sentence will be, so it's not that hard to understand when to use possessive pronouns. Still, starting from the next case, I will no longer use его, ее, and ich because they're the same, so using them every time is principally pointless. Here, we have the masculine singular in the genitive, relating to possession. Он из моего дома. Я из твоего дома. Он из нашего дома, and я из вашего дома. Notice how the noun dom also changes, and it has to change to match the genitive. The same also applies to any noun in any other case. All of these phrases are in the genitive, and the pattern for the possessive pronouns is basically the same, following the same endings. Here, we have the masculine singular in the dative, relating to direction. Он идет к моему дому. Я иду к твоему дому. Он идет к нашему дому. And я иду к вашему дому. Dom also has to change to fit the case, which is the dative. Here, we have two nouns, one animate and one inanimate, to show how these pronouns work in the accusative, because the accusative works with animate and inanimate objects. Он видит моего брата. Я вижу твоего брата. Он видит нашего брата, and я вижу вашего брата. Brat is an animate object meaning brother. Therefore, it has to change under the accusative. If the object is animate, like дом, the pattern will be the same as in the nominative. Он видит мой дом, я вижу твой дом, он видит наш дом, and я вижу ваш дом. Here, we have the masculine singular in the instrumental, relating to the use with an instrument. Он с моим братом. Я с твоим братом. Он с нашим братом, and я с вашим братом. Brat also has to change to fit the case, which is the instrumental. Here, we have the masculine singular in the prepositional, relating to prepositions. Он в моем доме. Я в твоем доме. Он в нашем доме, and я в вашем доме. Dom also changes to fit the case, which is the prepositional. Now, let's move on to the feminine. Here, we have the feminine singular in the nominative, the dictionary form of nouns. Моя машина, твоя машина, наша машина, and ваша машина. In this case, the possessive pronouns change the endings to fit the feminine noun машина in the nominative. Now, because the feminine possessive pronouns are mainly borrowed from one another, the following phrases will all have the same possessive pronouns. However, don't get them confused just because they're in a different case. Here, we have the feminine singular in the genitive, showing possession. Шины моей машины. Шины твоей машины. Шины нашей машины and шины вашей машины. Машина also changes, but this time it fits the genitive. Here we have the feminine singular in the dative, showing direction. Он идет к моей машине. Я иду к твоей машине. Он идет к нашей машине. And я иду к вашей машине. Машина also changes, but this time it fits the dative. Here we have the feminine singular in the instrumental, relating to the use with an instrument. Он с моей машиной. Я с твоей машиной. Он с нашей машиной. And я с вашей машиной. Машина also changes, but this time it's the instrumental. Here we have the feminine singular in the prepositional, relating to prepositions. Он в моей машине. Я в твоей машине. Он в нашей машине. And я в вашей машине. Машина also changes, but this time it's the prepositional. Here we have the accusative, but in this case, it doesn't matter if an object is animate or inanimate, so we can just use машина again. Он видит мою машину. Я вижу твою машину. Он видит нашу машину. And я вижу вашу машину. Машина also changes, but this time it's the accusative. Now, let's move on to the neuter. Here, we have the neuter singular in the nominative. Моё здание, твоё здание, наше здание, and ваше здание. In this case, there is no change to the nouns, but the possessive pronouns change to fit the neuter. Here, we have the neuter singular in the genitive. Люди моего здания. Люди твоего здания. Люди нашего здания. And люди вашего здания. Здание also changes to fit the genitive, but in this case, the possessive pronouns are the same as in the masculine. Actually, they're all the same, except for the accusative. So let's have some examples. Here, we have the neuter singular in the dative. Он идет к моему зданию. Я иду к твоему зданию. Он идет к нашему зданию. And я иду к вашему зданию. Здание also changes to fit the dative. Here, we have the neuter singular in the instrumental. Он с моим зданием. Я с твоим зданием. Он с нашим зданием. And я с вашим зданием. Здание also changes to fit the instrumental. Here, we have the neuter singular in the prepositional. Он в моем здании, я в твоем здании, он в нашем здании, and я в вашем здании. Здание also changes to fit the prepositional. Here, we have the accusative, but in this case, it doesn't matter if an object is animate or inanimate, so we can just use здание. Он видит мое здание, я вижу твое здание, он видит наше здание, and я вижу ваше здание. Because здание is inanimate, it doesn't change under the accusative. Finally, let's move on to plurality, and it doesn't matter what gender is used, as long as the noun is plural. Here, we have the plural in the nominative. Мои машины, твои машины, наши машины, and ваши машины. Машина also changes to fit the plurality in the nominative. Here, we have the plural in the genitive. Шины моих машин, шины твоих машин, шины наших машин, and шины ваших машин. Машина also changes to fit the plurality in the genitive. Here, we have the plural in the dative. Он идет к моим машинам, я иду к твоим машинам, он идет к нашим машинам, and я иду к вашим машинам. Машина also changes to fit the plurality in the dative. Here, we have two nouns, one animate and one inanimate, in the accusative, because in this case, the pattern is different for both, being borrowed from the plural nominative and genitive. Он видит моих собак. Я вижу твоих собак. Он видит наших собак, and я вижу ваших собак. Собака is an animate object meaning dog, and it changes to fit the accusative, along with the possessive pronoun. Using an inanimate object, the possessive pronoun will be different. Он видит мои машины. Я вижу твои машины. Он видит наши машины, and я вижу ваши машины. Машина is an inanimate object meaning car, and it changes to fit the accusative, along with the possessive pronoun. Here, we have the plural in the instrumental. Он с моими собаками, я с твоими собаками, он с нашими собаками, and я с вашими собаками. Собака also changes to fit the plurality in the instrumental. Finally, we have the plural in the prepositional. Он в моих машинах, я в твоих машинах, он в наших машинах, and я в ваших машинах. Машина also changes to fit the plurality in the prepositional. Even though some sentences were sort of nonsensical, it was still possible to understand how possessive pronouns work in Russian. And this is how they work.